What do you think the biggest myth still being told out there in women's hormones going on nowadays in conventional medicine?
Oh my gosh. In conventional medicine, I think there's a couple. One, I still hear the myth like hormones cause cancer. It's automatically 1-to-1 start it, will get cancer, which drives me crazy. Number two is you can't test. There's no testing you can do at all, full stop. That drives me crazy. And then that there's a limited amount of things you can do. There's only there's a few hormones, right? There's like a few hormones we do. And it really depends on the provider. Some are like, well, we only do the birth control pill, or we only do the oral estrogen, or we only do the patch. When in fact, you know this, and I know this, there are so many different types, routes, dosages, forms of hormones that we can personalize it to a woman so easily. And that's what I like, those key things I wish around hormones and hormone therapy, I wish would get out there more.
Great. This is going to be a great conversation because that first one out of the box, hormones cause cancer. You know, the FDA recently just removed those outdated black box warnings from the Women's Health Initiative study, which for me and you that have been preaching from the mountaintops that, hey, it doesn't increase the risk of cancers if done right. It doesn't increase risk of dementia. It doesn't increase risk of cardiovascular disease. Take those warnings off. We're excited. But what do you want like patients nowadays to understand? Now that that black box warning is gone, what do they really need to know now that those warnings are off of those hormones?
I think you actually hit the nail on the head when you said if done right, and that's the nuance around it. So they took the black box warning off of all menopausal hormones, which does include progestins. It does include the kind of hormones that you swallow, and they do still come with caveats. So again, there's nuance to everything. What I originally was very excited about, because I'm sure you would hear it from women, I would hear it from women, is they'd go to get their vaginal hormones and then they would read the 42-page handout that was printed at the pharmacy. And the very first thing is the black box warning. Your vaginal hormones are going to kill you. And you're going to get a stroke and you're going to get a clot and it's going to cause cancer. And so then they freak out. Or they'll get progesterone. And same black box warning. This progesterone is going to kill you. You're going to get cancer and a clot. So I'm really glad on the things that aren't going to increase the risk of cancer, aren't going to increase the risk of clot or things like that. Even topical estrogen, not going to increase those things. But there is the nuance that if you swallow your estrogen, so you do even synthetic, that there is the slight increased risk of clot. And then for the progestins, which is the synthetic progesterone, commonly we call it medroxyprogesterone acetate. Don't let the progesterone in that name fool you. It's still a synthetic progesterone or progestin, synthetic either way, does have a slight increased risk of a breast cancer formation. So I'm thrilled with the black box warning. But again, just like you said, if done right.
I could give you like a high five right now because like, I'll be honest with you, that's exactly when I read all that. Like, I'm super excited because I think now women have the ability to walk in their doctor and say, hey, these black box warnings are gone. I want to be on hormones. Help me do that. Now, sadly, a lot of prescribers are going to be like, oh, I'm not quite for sure what to do. But you're right. There is that caveat nuance in there that it said oral and topical, and it included some synthetic progestins, like we talked, like you just mentioned, in oral estrogen, which still has risk. And I would agree. I'm excited about the openness, but I think that's really where the challenge comes. And I'll be honest with you, when you even look out on the internet and you look at a lot of doctors and influencers that are like, they know their stuff. I heard there was a podcast the other day of some well-known doctors. And even during this, she mentioned a progesterone IUD. And you and I both know there's not progesterone IUDs. There's progestin. So when I hear that, even with the experts, there's misnomenclature. Because you're right, this is very complicated. And that's one thing about you that I love. You typically make the complicated simple. Do you want to kind of say anything about that? I just would like to get your thoughts.
And unfortunately, it happens like a lot. Like even in research studies, you'll read a research study and they're like progesterone. And then you read the fine print, you read the table, and it's very much a progestin that's synthetic. Same thing for estrogen. They'll say like estrogen, estradiol, and progesterone, but it's conjugated equine estrogen, which is a synthetic estrogen made out of horse urine. And so even research articles, research authors are very loosey-goosey in how they categorize their hormones. And I think that's something that needs to definitely be cracked down more. It's now that the amount of money is going towards women's health research, the amount of education that's out there that don't just talk in an umbrella term. Don't just call it an estrogen or call it a progesterone. Like, what do you really mean? Because they're not exactly the same and they come with different side effects and nuances.
That's great. So one other thing about this, though, I think that's also going to be a challenge as we move forward. Now that more women will probably have the opportunity to be on hormones and they're more confident that they're making the right decision, is N of one medicine when it comes to hormones.
Oh, yeah.
What I mean by that is, as well as me, there is not one size fits all. I.e., there's not 4 doses of an estrogen patch and 2 doses of commercially available progesterone that fit every woman.
Yeah.
Because there are so many things we're going to talk about that influence the woman's ability and what her hormone dose needs to be. You want to kind of give me some thoughts on that about like how personalized you see working with women is and that specific hormone dose and combination that they need?
I think on social media, we see that it's a panacea for everything. It'll, you'll see angels and earn a crown and like feel amazing if you go on hormones. And a lot of women, thankfully, now do have access to hormone therapy, but then they reply in the comments, hated it, didn't work, had side effects, don't understand. And it's very nuanced, just like any other medication. I had a case I was consulting on recently where she wanted to start with progesterone, 100 milligrams prometrium, run it through insurance. I was like, okay, fine. Didn't like it, wasn't enough, wanted to go up to 200 milligrams. I said, great, double the dose. Hated it, felt worse, having bloating, feeling puffy. So she went back down to 100. So then she said, you know what, actually, I forgot to mention that I'm actually pretty sensitive to peanuts. I'm not lying. I even asked her, do you have any allergies to peanuts? No. And then apparently her husband was like, you're actually pretty quite sensitive to peanuts. She's like, well, I'm not allergic. I said, well, there's peanut oil in there. Switched to compounded 100 milligrams. And she said, well, now I'm still waking up at 3 a.m. I said, all right, let's do the slow release, 100 milligrams. Now she's dialed in. Feels great. But you can see we went from prometrium 100 to prometrium 200, back to prometrium 100, to compounded 100 to compounded 100 slow release. And I know women can be like, that's a pain. That's ridiculous. I would never. But we do it with everything in our life. We have to adjust any medication you take. We have to adjust. We have to change the style, the dose, the route. And we use it. I mean, literally everything. You buy a lipstick, you put it on, you don't like the shade. You're like, shoot, it should have been redder. Shouldn't have been this orange. So what do? Right? Like the next time we go buy a different shade. Didn't like that it's matte. We wanted it glossy. Dang it. All right. We go back. We do it for everything. And so that's why when women, I understand their frustration. I fully do. But I wish the education out there was, first of all, we have a lot of options. But second of all, we do have to play with it a little bit. We don't always hit it out of the park the first round.
2 outstanding call outs in there. One, you can't do hormone therapy in the comments of a social media post. And you know that. I feel like that's what women want nowadays. It's like, I just want to put a couple comments and figure it out, but it's so much more nuancy. And then the other thing that you mentioned too is that unfortunately, like we'll talk about that. You didn't start menopause yesterday. You didn't start these is a year thing. So if it takes 3-4 months to get things right compared to the years it took things to get wrong, if you look at it like that, it's a lot more reasonable. But I fully understand it. When you feel like crud and you're tired, run down, fatigued, don't sleep, you want it fixed yesterday. So
you want it fixed yesterday. And I even ask questions, which I'm sure you do, and like a lot of the like really educated providers, because somebody will say, well, how do I know where to start? Like, how do you even decide on a route? And I'll say things like, well, I'll ask them what they do for a living. So, for example, consulted on a vet tech the other day, constantly handling animals. And we know animals can pick up hormone. And so if she rubbed her hormones on her inner arm and was wearing her short sleeve scrubs and then cradling animals all day, even though she rubs it in, even though it does get absorbed on the off chance, little kids, if she's rubbing in her hormones on her inner arm or wherever, and then holding kids, co-sleeping, things like that. I said, just look, there is the chance for transferring. I don't know that I'm going to use a gel right off the bat. Adhesive. I was just reading a bunch of comments in an athlete Reddit on hormones. So women who are CrossFitters, women who do triathlons, women who are big time swimmers. And they were like, these estrogen patches suck because the adhesive, like you get sweaty, you get wet, you've got your wetsuit on, wetsuit off, running shorts on, bike shorts off. They're like, what am I supposed to do? And then, there's all these, well, rub your skin with alcohol, let it dry, rubbing alcohol, let it dry, stick the patch on, stick a big Band-Aid waterproof adhesive over. And then women are like, what? I don't have time for this, So I started asking these questions. Tell me about your life. Tell me what makes most sense. Do you have an aversion to swallowing pills? And then I can sort of figure out from there what might be the best route and where to start.
Yeah. And I can't tell you, like you just nailed it. These hormones are very nuanced. And I can't tell you how many women I have that we go test and their testosterone's off the chart and they're not even on testosterone.
Yes.
They're not PCOS, but their husbands are slapping on these testosterone creams. Yeah, it's you just see that so much.
All the time. I would see that all the time where like they'd have a gym, they'd have a home gym, right? And he would go work out first and she'd go work out behind him and then pick up all the testosterone because he'd just put his testosterone gel on and then he'd go work out because now he has an extra pump, not realizing he's smearing that all over the machines. And then she goes and picks it up.
Yeah, that's good. So we've pretty much established hormones are very personalized.
Yes.
And in the world of hormones, one of the controversial things is part of personalization is starting the patient, but more importantly, monitoring the patient.
Yes.
And I was always taught, especially like many years ago in school, it's like, oh, you can just give hormones and just see how things go. But you and I both know hormones can't be done like that. You have to test. And testing is very controversial in our world because there is no, I've learned there is no one right way.
Right.
That's the one thing I definitely have learned. I would love to give your take when ladies are told, oh, your hormones are normal or you're being followed. I would love to just hear your insights on testing. What have you learned through the years? You've done this so much. I'd love to get your insight on that.
Yes, through the many, many years. In fact, I worked in the lab world for almost a decade. So I got a lot of behind the scenes on labs and hormones in particular. So the reason, first of all, I'll start with why. Why do we not have testing for perimenopause? First of all, there's no test that says, are you in perimenopause? And women will say, test me to tell me if I'm in perimenopause. It's age and symptoms. If you're of an appropriate age, late 30s, 40s, 50s, and you have a lot of symptoms, probably perimenopause, and we go on from there. Doesn't mean we can't test your hormones in some sort of way. So when we look at hormone testing, if you're still cycling regularly, let's say you still ovulate, then I'm guessing that I'm going to test you probably 5 to 7 days after ovulation, which I know for listeners are probably their head is spinning like, what? How do you figure this out? Essentially, I'm testing in what's called the second half of your cycle, the mid-luteal phase, when progesterone should be its highest, but it might not be. So I'm going to catch that on testing, and then estrogen. And that's if I'm doing a one-day test, like a blood test or a dried urine test. Now, if, let's say, you're trying to get pregnant, then I'm going to switch a little bit. I may do some testing on day 2 or 3 or 4 of your cycle. And then again in mid-luteal. But let's say you're listening to this and you're like, I am a chaotic. I am a roller coaster gone wild. I get my period every 2 weeks and then I skip 2 months and then it came back normal and then I skipped a month again. Like I can never figure out where my period is. Then I may or may not do your estrogen and progesterone. Do you remember we do have over 50 hormones in the body? So I may look at your thyroid hormone. I'm going to look at your insulin hormone. I'm going to look at these testosterone, which doesn't shift so much with your cycle. I might look at DHEA. I'll look at your cortisol hormone. There's other hormones I'm going to evaluate. There are also other ways to test. So for example, technology now, it's moving so rapidly. We have the wearables, we have the rings and the watches and the bands, but now we have tests that you can literally, like pee on a stick every morning and it will graph out on your phone on an app what your hormones are doing. So if you're really wild and out with your hormones, but we still want to see what kind of semblance is happening, then that's the suggestion I'm going to make. Like, let's do that for a couple of months. See how high your highs are, how low your lows are, what estrogen's doing, what progesterone's doing, and we can go from there. Doesn't mean I'm going to hold hormones from you. It doesn't mean it's going to stop our treatment plan, but it just goes to show there is just as much nuance in testing as there is deciding on which hormone to do. So it's not just go to the lab any old day on a Tuesday and get your blood drawn. I have to ask these other questions. Do you still cycle? Are you regular? And if you're listening to this and you're like, gosh, I haven't cycled in a while. I am like 8 months, no period, or I'm fully postmenopausal. I'm 15 months, no period. The good thing about you is you can test anytime. And I can totally test your estrogen and progesterone, and I can test it anytime because you haven't had a period in a long time.
That's some great info. So you mentioned peeing on a stick. I know you can spit in a tube.
You can spit in a tube.
I know you
saliva.
can draw some blood.
Yep.
What is your kind of like preferences or nuance in terms of which one of those are best for what? I know this is like Pandora's box, but I would just love to get your insight because it's one of the most common things I get. And we can talk about certain hormones for certain tests are better than others. What's your take on what test is best for what for hormones?
So if you are brand new, starting out, never done this before, like to run it through insurance, then I take some blood. I'm like, let's just do the basics. Let's find the right part of your cycle. If you're cycling, I can do your thyroid glucose insulin. I can check your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, plus everything else, vitamin D, B12, iron, et cetera, et cetera. You go to the lab, you get a blood draw, I get some information on you. Now, if we want to get more advanced, like I said, pee on a stick as an example, then we're going to test every day. So let's say you're like, I get migraines, they come and go. I get extreme mood swings that come and go. I get these histamine symptoms that seem to come and go with my cycle. Then a one-day test isn't going to work. So then I'm like, okay, next budgetary level up, we're going to do the test you do at home. That's kind of every day or every other day. Much more narrow, just estrogen, progesterone, another hormone called FSH, and LH. But that'll let me see like the highs and highs, the lows and lows. Do you ovulate? It'll help me piece together your whole cycle. Now, let's say you're having a lot of detox issues or estrogen issues or cancer runs in your family. You have hair growth in places you don't want. You're angry. You're losing hair. Maybe you have been PCOS. I'm like, okay, that's where I need to go even deeper. So now I need to know what's called a metabolite, or where your hormones go, what pathway they're going on. So then I'll do a urine test. That's more like a one-day comprehensive test. So you'll collect a few times during the day, maybe at night if you have insomnia and wake up at 3 a.m. And then I get 6 pages of results all about you. But let's say you're like, oh, that's kind of a lot. I don't know. I'd like to know a little bit about my cortisol and a little bit about my hormones. Then you can do saliva. So then you could spit in a tube or suck on a cotton swab a couple times in the day. I get some of your hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, and I get some information on your cortisol as we go through the day, like a cortisol pattern in the day. So you can see I can tailor hormone testing to have you ever had it before? Are we trying to go for insurance here? What's the budget and how much information do we need to know? For some women, I need to know a lot of information. Like we're really working with a really intense case. So I'm going to do more intense testing. And for others, they want something more like, I just need to know, I want to follow myself through my cycle. I want to know why I get these histamine symptoms. I want to know why I get these migraines. I'm like, well, that's an everyday thing. So we're going to shift to that to start. And I think women really appreciate that I'm not like, here's 4,200 tests you have to take for $6,000, where I'm like, oh, here's what you're going to do instead. Like we're going to start here. We're going to move here. Like here's the timeline. Here's the path, depending on your goals, your needs, what I see, what I think, etc. And I think that makes women feel really in control, as it should, and understand that again, we're back to, it's not the one size fits all. We have really great options out there, but I can meet her needs and her wants and goals.
There's a couple things you said that are super critical. I think one that I see as a pharmacist too, that those perimenopausal years, trying to do a one-day test when somebody's got a lot of hormones going on, that's like trying to find a needle in a haystack because it's a bouncing ball and we don't know. And I don't think a lot of people know you can do these hormone tests that look at certain days through a certain cycle and look for patterns, because it's that pattern recognition is what allows us as practitioners to make the best educated guess about starting hormone replacement and being successful as fast as possible.
Yes.
So I think that's a good call. And I don't think many people know that.
No, it's a newer thing. I do want to just say that like the at home every day is definitely within the last year or two. And I've been loving it. I had a case the other day where they had all the low symptoms of estrogen. They hadn't had a period. They'd been skipping their period. All the low symptoms. They felt horrible, hot flashes, night sweats, all the dryness, the joints, the aches, everything. Then all of a sudden they got a migraine and all these histamine symptoms. They were like the 7 dwarves of allergies, but they'd been doing their at-home tests, their at-home everyday test. And what we saw when she showed me the chart was she was low estrogen for like 20 days, low estrogen. And then it spiked up. Her follicle in her ovary just like did a thing. And then she had really high estrogen. And at that shift, I said, is that when you got the migraine? Is that when the allergy started? She's like, yes. I said, okay, I could see. She hadn't started her period yet though, but I could see right then and there. I'm like, you're not crazy. You're not making this up. Here's what your follicle did. It didn't make estrogen. It rolled its eyes and it made estrogen. And that's why you feel like you do. And I think having that immediate feedback for women who are going, I feel like I'm crazy. These symptoms come and go. Some weeks it's like this. Some weeks it's like that. Sometimes I put my patch on and I hate it. And some weeks I put my patch on and I love it. Like, why? I'm like, this is why, because the follicles are truly kind of like a roller coaster that's gone off the rails.
Yeah. And I mean, and you know that's that whole brain female reproductive system crosstalk that just gets out of balance as that perimenopausal years goes there. And it can go haywire in so many ways. Cause you said there's 50 hormones. There's so many things that can go wrong. And all of those during that period are definitely a challenge. And that's one of the things that we see. Along that same lines, let's kind of talk about perimenopause. I've watched your video. You have a really popular video that kind of explains perimenopause and this whole continuum. And I think on a functional medicine sense, we talk about diseases continuums because these things don't happen overnight. They take years. Let's talk about perimenopause. How do you see perimenopause? Do you see it as a stress problem, a progesterone deficiency as time goes down? You hear estrogen dominance, like you hear that so much. Lots of times it's really probably not an estrogen issue. How do you explain perimenopause to women?
Yes. So I say it's the 6 to 10 year transitional period before you walk through the door of menopause, which is if you still have your uterus, it's when you never get a period again. In theory, you shouldn't. So it's this transitional year, and it's literally a transitional year. As we all remember going through puberty when we were younger, now we're reversing out of it. So all the things that had to come online for women to get their period, to become reproductive, to like grow and mature into the body they had, is like e-brake has been thrown and we've got it in reverse, and it's going to take a while to get out of that. What's really fascinating is we used to say, which is still true, is like women are only born with a certain amount of eggs or follicles. And the follicles, the cells on the outside of the follicle are what pump out the hormone. We only have so many and we lose a lot every month. And so eventually as women get older, the brain is yelling down to the ovaries, hey, do the thing, make the hormone. And we went from, millions of follicles to thousands of follicles to hundreds of follicles. And suddenly we're running out of follicles. What's even more fascinating is the amount of research coming out on the mitochondria. So back in 2017, I read the mitochondrial theory of aging, and it specifically focused on the ovaries. And I got so much backlash where people were like, that's not true. It's not the mitochondria, it's the follicle. And now fast forward, a lot of researchers are going, actually, it turns out the ovaries have a boatload of mitochondria. And in case you forgot, the mitochondria are our cellular powerhouses. They make ATP, which is energy, cellular energy, like a battery power, but it also makes your hormones. So when you need to make an estrogen, you need to make a progesterone, you need to make a testosterone. The first step is in the mitochondria. So if they're getting beat up, if they're getting inflamed, if they're not working right, if they don't have good, power, cellular power to them, if they don't have the nutrients that are right, if stress has been high, if environmental toxins have been high, then they are going to get sick, and then get sick and die. They can get sick and malfunction. And so as a result, you don't make hormones like you used to. And you surely aren't going to have communication between the brain down to the mitochondria like you used to. And so now I take the two of these together. I'm like, it's a natural act of aging. It's not a disease. You're running out of follicles, coupled with your poor little mitochondria have just been beaten up over 40 years. 50 years, and they're just not making the hormone like they used to. Now, the good thing is we've been talking a lot about this as if it's the worst thing ever, but there is a lot of good that comes out of the other end. And there is a lot of support we can do in addition to hormones. And I think you asked me about myths in the beginning. I think this is another big myth. Like there's nothing you can do. Best of luck. Oh, no. There's so much you can do to help have a very healthy transition through this phase. We survive puberty, we'll totally survive perimenopause.
Very, very good. So we talked about, I've heard your lectures, and that's what I've learned too, 35 to 40-ish, that progesterone begins to kind of start falling off. Your body's kind of making estrogen, leads to some of those perimenopausal symptoms. So doing cyclic progesterone is something we commonly see during perimenopause. We see that more and more. We have good success with that, especially for those low progesterone issues that women have, and we can talk about that. But it seems like lately, people will be low in progesterone and we'll be giving them progesterone. And this is compounded where we can go pretty low doses and we're still struggling. We may make things worse instead of better. Why do you think that's happening?
I have a couple theories behind it. One, if we look at the progesterone receptor itself, it does require a number of nutrients. So for example, in order for a progesterone receptor to pull a progesterone in, it's these little fingers. They're called zinc fingers. So if somebody's zinc deficient, then they're going to really struggle with the receptor itself. And other hormones play a role there, such like vitamin B6. So somebody's vitamin B6 deficient, like we're just going to struggle at the receptor right then and there. The other thing is when we swallow progesterone, it goes through into the liver and it blows apart into a lot of different metabolites. And this whole process is called first pass. Basically, anything you eat, breathe, drink, swallow goes to the liver. The liver picks it apart like TSA. It goes through it and takes everything out, looks at it, and then disperses it from there. So some people don't have a very healthy liver. In fact, I read a statistic the other day, 24 to 30% of American adults have fatty liver. 24 to 30% of American adults have fatty liver. So if you're swallowing your progesterone, then the liver being fatty and inflamed and not doing well may not break it apart the way that you want to. When it does break it apart, some women are really sensitive to what it turns into, which is called a metabolite. So it goes up to their brain, and instead of being calming and soothing and relaxing, they get the opposite. They're like, I feel angry, I feel rageful, I feel worse when this happened. And so now we can see quickly that between the nutrient status of somebody, the liver health status of somebody, what's going on in their brain, that it may not, oral progesterone that you swallow may not work that well for every person. It will also layer on top of that. I mentioned prometrium earlier, and prometrium is the trademarked pharmaceutical form of natural progesterone. It comes in 2 doses, 100 and 200 milligrams. In the United States, it does have peanut oil in it. In Canada, they took it out. Lucky, but not here. And it also does come with a number of food dyes. So if you are sensitive to either peanut oil or to food dye, it's in a tiny little tablet. So you would think it's not very much, but for some women, like the patient I mentioned earlier, it's enough that their body's like, I don't like this, I'm going to react.
You've touched on a couple of key things. I have had many women who can't take the peanut oil. And that was the one thing. You get rid of that and all of a sudden they can take it. Plus, like you said, we can compound different dosings. But you nailed something too. And I think that's it. And I think I see this more and more. And I think it's just because our biologies are so complicated. I see more and more people it's just like kids with antihistamine. Sometimes you'll give a kid an antihistamine and it knocks them out, makes them tired. But you have those kids, they have a paradoxical reaction. You give an antihistamine and it should calm them and it wires them off the chart. And I think it's the same exact thing with this. I mean, it's very, very patient specific, but we do see that. So
yeah. And if you're already a sensitive bunny, this is how I describe them. Like if you already know you're really sensitive, like if you already know you have to take less than the average person, like less ibuprofen or less vitamin C, or you can only do so much caffeine before you feel it, you're probably going to be that way with hormones too, even though you have them in your body. So maybe this is the case where we do start out really low. I mean, I've definitely compounded progesterone at 25 milligrams. Like we're going to do 25 milligrams. We're going to slow roll up to this to 100 and get your body used to it while supporting the nutrients and supporting the liver. Because some women, they know who they are. They're just that sensitive person. That's okay. We can work with that.
So let's talk about, I think you're pretty much in my camp. I mean, it's a combination of estrogen and progesterone, which control many of these menopausal symptoms. There's other hormones too. But I mean, I would say starting estrogen now has become more and more accepted. People are seeing it safer and all that type of stuff. But what frightens me dramatically, I ask a lot of women, and I would say almost 90% of the women I ask, hey, you're on estrogen. Has your doctor ever checked your urinary metabolites to make sure you're breaking it down the right path? And they say no. And that just makes my hair on the back of my neck stand up. Because like we talked about earlier, hormones done right. And to me, part of doing hormones done right, and I don't think I have to debate you on this one. You're right there. We should be, if a lady's on estrogen, she should be monitoring metabolites. Do you agree with that?
I do, absolutely. And sometimes people will say, well, do you monitor before and after? Like, do you want to know a baseline ahead of time? And ideally, that'd be great. If I knew ahead of time how they're going to break down their estrogen before I put them on it, that'd be great. But from a budgetary purpose, they may not work. So I'm like, cool, why don't we just start it? And then after a couple of months, let's look. And the reason is, again, we don't want to scare people. It's not that because estrogen causes cancer. It's not a 1-to-1, but estrogen should be broken down in a particular way. And one of the pathways can become what we call genotoxic, meaning it can damage DNA. Now, thankfully, the human body is smart and has a DNA repair system. So it's like AAA. You blow a tire on the side of the road, AAA shows up, fixes your tire, and you go on your way. So you have DNA damage, AAA shows up, fixes the DNA, and we go about our way. The problem is if everybody blows a tire, we only have so many AAAs on the road. So now the DNA is damaged, the repair didn't happen, or it happened shoddily, quickly, and then the DNA turns into cancer itself. Like it starts to create a bad cell. The bad cell replicates and down we go. So this is why it's nice to know, where is your estrogen going? How does it get out of the body? Because the great thing is we can absolutely support it through diet, lifestyle, supplements, etc.
Very good. Now, I'm just going to throw this out because you mentioned something at a lecture that I've never heard anybody say before. So we all know as practitioners, we recommend estrogen metabolism down good pathways, and there's things called like DIM,
yes,
I3C. But one of the things you brought up in a lecture that I didn't think, if you've got somebody balanced, doing perfectly on hormones, or they're at this maybe perimenopausal state where estrogen's starting to fall, and you throw on something like DIM, you can totally throw them out of balance, because now all of a sudden you allow that body to empty out that estrogen and clear it better. And now that estrogen progesterone ratio gets off. And I had never really thought about that before, but I have seen that in patients. So that was a good call out. Do you have any just kind of thoughts on that as far as that goes?
Yes. And a paper was published in 2025 by Newman and Smeaton, where they looked at this actual data. We'd known it anecdotally forever. We knew that DIM lowered estrogen out of circulation. So if you're a high estrogen girl and somebody suggests DIM to you, it's just going to help bring it down into the normal range. And if you're on it too long or too much, it could bring it down all the way. But what was happening is menopausal women were going on it. And then they were like, I feel worse. I'm dry. My joints hurt. I'm having hot flashes. My brain fog's back. I feel terrible. What happened? And I said, what happened was you're taking all this DIM and you're bringing your estrogen down out of circulation. And then that did get published earlier this year to show before and after results. So I'd seen tens of thousands of reports of people using DIM, and so much anecdotal response from our colleagues and, doctors and pharmacists and nurse practitioners and everybody who tests, who was like, I've got these women that are really like, it's making them too low. I'm like, yeah, let's not do that. Let's move on to something else to support detox.
Got it. Yeah. And you've got some great other things. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out because I think that's a really popular topic. And I don't think many women realize that they sometimes could be causing more harm than good when it comes to that. So.
Especially because it's over the counter and it's so common and you see it all the time. And so women are just like, oh, I have estrogen problems, take DIM. And they order it online and then they're like, I feel worse. Like, unfortunately, don't do that.
Want to get your thoughts. The body only has so many precursors from cholesterol, pregnenolone, and further down to make their hormones. That's that whole hormone cascade. Like you said, there's a lot of different hormones the body makes. We all have stress. It's all crazy. I want to get your thoughts. Let's say you're working with somebody and you get their estrogen and progesterone perfect, and even maybe testosterone, but they've got massive cortisol problems. If you don't address cortisol, is your mindset that like, hey, you better work on that, because if you don't, you can fix all your other hormones and we're going to have problems because all those downward negative things that happen. What's your thoughts on cortisol in that aspect in terms of making sure, especially during perimenopause when that kind of steals from progesterone and all that? What's your thoughts there?
Oh my gosh. So first of all, remember, we have the fight or flight response, which is sympathetic. And then we have the rest, digest, heal, repair, detox. That's our parasympathetic side. So if somebody is chronically fight or flight, go, high stress, high cortisol, then the poor body is like, how am I supposed to rest, digest? So now you have digestive issues. How am I supposed to repair? So now you cut yourself, or your skin isn't healing, or your hair isn't growing as much. How are you supposed to detox, right? Like all these things start to slow down because of that high stress that you've been enduring. So it's definitely something to be done simultaneously. And stress the feedback starts up to the brain, where the brain goes, ooh, I need to prioritize sending nutrients and sending signals to important things like your brain, your heart, your lungs, your skeletal muscle, because clearly you're about to fight a bear. So I'm going to send them there, and I'm not going to send it to your ovaries, and I'm not going to send it to your digestion, and I'm not going to send it other places. And so people will lose progesterone because the brain has shifted all the resources other places. It's like, we have to go over here and handle the stress. Like ovulate, get pregnant. No way. Like make a hormone. So it focuses other places. So yes, I think unfortunately a lot of, in our society, the hustle culture, the amount of stress that people are under is just obscene. And it just breaks my heart because they're coming into perimenopause already tired, burned out, burning the candle at both ends. And then you layer perimenopause on top and women go, I have completely crashed out. Like, I don't know what happened. I feel terrible. I'm like, I know, because your 20s and your 30s, you've been running, burning. Then we layer blood sugar issues on top, et cetera, et cetera. And then we pull, the tablecloth out from under you, and there go your hormones. It's no wonder you feel the way that you do. So cortisol, stress, nervous system management is a huge part of this.
Got you. Are you a firm believer in terms of testing like that, either doing a cortisol awakening curve, which is that multi-testing in the morning, or doing at least a 4-point salivary cortisol is kind of the way so that you can get kind of a snapshot of what the body's doing in terms of its adrenal function so that you can treat it properly, because there's the gamut of high to low and suppression and all that. But give me your thoughts on that. I'd love to hear how you handle that.
I do love cortisol testing. And as you said, I love the cortisol awakening response is the natural response of cortisol in the morning. You should go up in about 30 to 45 minutes naturally, and then decline the rest of the day. But unfortunately, a lot of people overshoot. They wake up, and I'll just ask them this simple question. How long does it take you in the morning when you wake up? How long does it take you to go from conscious to alert? On average, should take you 30 to 45 minutes. You should get up, you should go and you go to the bathroom. And then you're like, you're getting about your day and you feel pretty good. And I mean this before caffeine. Some people will say to me, I wake up at a level 10. Carrie, I wake up in full panic, ready to go. I'm like, ooh, you're overshooting the moon. And other people say, Carrie, it takes me 2 to 3 hours, 2 to 3 cups of coffee. I'm just dragging in the morning. I hit snooze several times. So, okay, your response is not that great. We need to support. Either way, we need to support you. So some sort of testing through the day, because then people go, well, I'm tired in the afternoon. I need coffee and a snack, or I'm spinning at night. I try to go to bed, but my mind is racing and I'm like all jazzed up. So I'm like, well, let's see what's going on. Or I wake up at 3 a.m. Carrie, I wake up at 3 a.m. like clockwork. Is that progesterone? Is that estrogen? Is it blood sugar? Is it cortisol? I'm like, well, let's test. Let's see what it is. And I think that's important, because if somebody says, I wake up at 3 a.m, it must be progesterone. So I'm taking progesterone, but yet maybe it's blood sugar, which can be activated by high cortisol, right? So then I'm like, well, actually, it's not progesterone. It's this thing over here. It's a totally different treatment. Let's spend the money, find what's really going on. And in that way, personalize, we can address that specifically.
Very cool. So, all right, I've got a couple of rapid fire ones for you just to kind of have fun. We can kind of close out on. So what do you think is the number one mistake that women makes when starting HRT that almost guarantees them that they won't feel better?
I think the number one mistake that I see a lot, only because I find, as I said earlier, a lot of women are sensitive bunnies, is that they will jump in and start everything at once, hate it, have multiple side effects, and then they don't know which one it is. So if you are a sensitive bunny, maybe start with one at a time. Start with progesterone. And then when you're ready, start with estrogen or testosterone. Add them in one at a time. That way we can fully adjust, fully dose one, and then we move on to the next. And then we move on to the next if we need to. And I think just reading all the comments over and over and over again, women who don't love their hormones, it's usually for that reason. I started them, got all these side effects, hated them, so I just blindly stopped all of them. Well, we don't even know which one it was.
In women, if you could fix one thing tomorrow to drastically improve that hormone balance, what's the one thing you would tell a woman to start working on first?
Sleep. I would tell them to start working, prioritize sleep over everything. We heal, we repair, we detox in our brain and our sleep. And I think a lot of women, partly because of hormone, partly because of life, family, what have you, they're shortchanging their sleep. They're getting less sleep. They're getting less quality sleep. They may be laying in bed, but they're not asleep. And then they're constantly borrowing day after day after day. And then it catches up to them, and they can't heal and they can't repair, and they don't feel that good. And they're dragging and they're relying on caffeine and sugar, and they're too tired to work out, and they're not in a good mood, and they're not nice. And so if we rewound all that and said, I need you at the very, very, very first to focus on your sleep, focus on your sleep.
Very good. So as well as me, and I want to say it's getting better, but golly, then I hear stories every day from women that women are either told, hey, your levels are normal, don't worry about it, or they feel dismissed. It's just part of aging. Get over it. That's just part of aging. What's the one message of hope you would give to women who are told that kind of stuff? I mean, I tell them, go find another doctor. That's just the way it is. But what's that one message of hope that you see changing that gives that woman hope to no, don't take that as an answer. Do something about it.
The good thing is, the thing I hope is that the explosion of perimenopause and menopause, at least all over social media and all the conferences, both conventional and functional, is massive. I think I know in the next 5 years, 10 for sure, the amount of education that's going to come out around perimenopause and menopause is going to be huge. The downside is that we are right now at the tidal wave. So we are, we're paving the way, and I know that can feel frustrating. But the amount of practitioners, providers, clinicians who really do want to learn about hormones is growing rapidly. So that's the message of hope. The other thing I say, just like you say, I'm like, if you took your dog to a vet and the vet was mean and you didn't like the vet, you would find a new vet. If you took your child to a pediatrician and the pediatrician was mean or wasn't helping solve the problem, you would find a new pediatrician. It's totally okay to find a new practitioner who meets your needs.
That's so awesome. All right. So you gave so much great insight today. I'm sure people, they need to follow you as much as they follow me as far as that goes. Where can they learn more about you, Carrie?
You can come to my website, drcarriejones.com. I'm all over Instagram at dr.carriejones. I have a YouTube, which is Dr. Carrie Jones, and my own podcast, which is Hello Hormones, where we talk all about hormones with Dr. Carrie Jones.
Very cool. Thank you so much. I will tell you, there were so many pearls and tidbits and nuggets you threw in today. I think if you, as a woman, struggle with perimenopause or menopausal symptoms, make sure that you share and subscribe to this video as far as it goes. But most importantly, if you know a woman out there that is struggling with these issues, make sure you share this. I think there's so many great tips to get that woman started on the journey to realize there is hope. And like you just said, these menopausal years don't have to be the worst. They can be the best. Mm-hmm. And we know so much now to help that. And that's something that you really shared light on today. And I really want to tell you thank you.
Well, thank you. This has been amazing.
Thanks so much. Have a great day. Thank you.